thinking about that this week. My little granddaughter has just been diagnosed with gluten intolerance, and my daughter's husband is Jewish. My wife says celiac disease and stuff like that is related. It's stronger in Jewish population than others. And I was thinking, how come when people have been eating wheat and related gluten products for thousands and thousands of years, how come that hasn't been Darwined out of the
Because the wheat
population?
that we're eating now isn't the wheat we used to eat, and the wheat here in America is not the same as the wheat in Europe. Because a lot of people who have like a gluten intolerance, not celiac, but a gluten intolerance, they tend to be able to eat bread in Europe, no problem.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Well, maybe my explanation, my granddaughter was a little off then. I told her, now you're going to have to drop that celiac of yours.
But yeah, like even when my mom is, was lactose intolerant. She's like, but when I was in Europe, I could eat everything. And I can eat anything cultured, and I don't have a problem because a lot of their dairy is cultured.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
Good time?
Yeah, hi, Judy.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah. Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Pat, that must be the newest in Seahawks gear.
Yeah, I got it after.
Because I've never seen one.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I wore my t-shirt yesterday that had the last tennis
We
team.
discussed today the meeting schedule. If you have insight.
I haven't heard from in response to the email I sent. I don't know. I think we'll have to just play it by ear. I don't want to announce it prematurely.
At least we can check in about next week.
Put it in, there's not three errors.
Oh, yeah.
What's that?
I don't
Check in
know
about
because
next
I
week
got some help.
To see what people's preferences are.
Well, next week is.
I got mine from the
I
library, it's
know,
due
but
tomorrow.
I thought whether there's an opportunity, because there's nothing.
Is it
coming out
renewable?
I thought we had.
No, someone's
For
waiting for
the
it.
service, we could do it.
Probably someone from here.
Yeah. I thought we were gonna-
I don't know, Joe's message was talking about other.
I know,
To meet on the book group.
You'll ask about
Yeah.
the book, and I was gonna give
And
it.
also, I think,
I didn't hear
missed
that.
that
I'm
one?
not quite
I read
sure,
the one from
but you don't want to put it into the church.
I read the one from Joe.
Oh,
She
yeah,
is not
yeah.
getting it.
Well, yeah, I just
Talking
know
about
we weren't
the
we
email.
weren't going to do it next week.
We're not?
We just- At
Okay.
least that was my thought.
Maybe you should ask Joe now, just for clarification, here, what happens to this book group, not only next week, but during Lent while adult education classes, I guess, are going on?
What do you want to happen to this book club?
Well,
Always answering a question with a question.
the initial understanding I had was that we had a built-in conflict with adult ed with new members who.
That's
wanted
not,
to-
yeah, that's not during Lent, that's after Easter.
Will we
The
finish
adult
this?
ed is after Easter?
I'm having a little bit of a hard time hearing today, Finley, so I don't want to be sure that I got all the words you were saying to me, but you were asking me what happens to this group during Lent, and the answer is you won't.
Okay,
So after Lent, we will have, I'm hoping to have Dr. Porter come and talk to us the Sunday after Easter. And then those weeks after Easter until Pentecost, this time will be not a new member class, but a Presbyterianism class that can function as a new member class for those who are wanting to join and able to make that time. And for others who just need to do something during the 9 o'clock class or are curious about what this means, they can come too.
Okay, so let me translate, try to, for me, help with the dates. The month of March, how are we looking in the month of March? Can we continue our classes, or are there conflicts with something else?
No, there's no conflicts. We're good.
Good.
Yes.
And the thrust of the email discussion over the weekend, I apologize for the confusion there, was if you want to do this next weekend, you can. Like, there's nothing happening before church
On the 15th.
on the 15th. There's nothing happening before worship. Worship is meeting, excuse me, I have the hiccups, 15 minutes later, just to provide a little bit of cushion for folks who
I forget.
miss the multiple notices, it happens every time we do this. It's on the door saying at 10:45 at Wallingford helps people who walk in the door at 10:30 say, oh, I can get there, as opposed to, oh, I need to go home and sit in shame.
So if the group was willing
You
and
could,
interested, we could meet at like 9:30 at Wallingford.
you could meet at 9 if you just gave them a heads up, but yeah.
Okay, whatever.
But isn't part of the thing then, if we choose to do that, then we also need to look at kid space people when they will
Well,
come.
So I was thinking that, and yet I'm looking around the room and I'm not seeing anyone with kids that use the kid space. So, see lots of parents, but no one with kids that use the kid space. So if there aren't any people that are using the kid space that are a part of this conversation, I see no reason why the kid space starting late would mean that you can't do your thing. We do try to offer the kid space during the education hour so the parents can come to this and not be watching their kids. But
There is one factor worthy of consideration. That's our precious Zoomies. Good morning.
yeah, so
They wouldn't be able to participate.
you wouldn't be able to, or you would just need to have someone bring a private laptop and log on to, if it's just one person, I feel like you can probably, what I would do in that case is I would make Alan pinned so that he's the only person you see on the screen,
Yeah,
and then just put him in the circle. Wallingford has tables that are kind of like our table, and I would just put Alan in one of the table spots and just have your conversation.
but we have had other Zoomies.
If it's
other
just
weeks.
Alan that's coming, I would just have someone bring a well-charged laptop from home and just be on Zoom for an hour.
When are Jen and Jean coming back? They've been Zooming with us.
Jan and Jean, if they come in, that becomes two people, but yeah.
So,
That's how, yeah.
So how are you all feeling about meeting next Sunday at Wallingford?
That's what we're
I
talking
have a
about.
question. If the service isn't until 10:45, why can't you meet here, finish promptly at 10, and it's not that
Oh,
far
you could
from
do
here to
that too.
Wallingford?
You could do that
You
too.
can do that too.
From here to Wallingford,
How
and make a
does that work?
10:45 service.
What are your preferences?
Yeah, I like Judy's idea.
Pardon me?
I like Judy's idea.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, I'll be riding my bike, so I'm not gonna walk up those hills, get off my bike and walk up the hills.
No.
And then right back to Wallingford.
You could probably ride.
So you can ride your bike and get-
Oh, no, I really want to ride my bike, but not that much.
Not that much.
Not yet.
I would bet you could get someone to kick you over and back.
Yeah, because someone drives.
That's what I meant, ride your bike here and then ride with somebody in a
If there
car.
weren't two giant hills that I can't get up yet,
What if you rode here and had somebody take you to Wallingford and back?
That's what I meant.
well, you'd have to fit my bike in your car.
No, we can bring you back
because you
here.
bring it
Back
in.
here, you went to-
Well, I'm actually closer to Wallingford home-wise,
It
but
might be easiest for you to just zoom in that day and then ride your bike to Wallingford if they were doing that.
true, or I could, the reward is riding downhill.
Yeah. I understand that one.
I'll think about it.
Okay, all right.
Thanks,
I
guys.
would skip it. I'd rather skip it. That's just my opinion.
I plan to skip as well.
Oh,
Yeah, we could sleep in.
I was just thinking I could sleep in next
okay,
Sunday.
well, skip it then.
And then the next
Yeah.
week we'll be back here.
Yeah, I'd like to maximize the number of people who are able to.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the decision is to skip next week?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay,
Sleep in.
good.
You can outvote it.
Okay. So even though June is not here, we should open with prayer. Creator God, thank you for the opportunity to meet again this morning to consider the history of your church in the so-called dark ages that are really the bright ages, and help us to keep our minds open and our tongues loose as we toss around the ideas presented by the authors of this interesting book. We ask all this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Okay. So today we've maybe reached the maximum point of difference from our track of studying Christian history and the author's point of studying just general history in Europe. In these two chapters, one about what happened in England in the 600s and thereabouts, and the other chapter about good old Charlie Mayne. They're not so much talking about the history of the church and of course they are talking about the history of the church, they're just not focusing on it as we probably should. So let's pick out the fine points here, talking about monks and what they were doing, and try to follow our general themes of the church's involvement with secular government and the alliance that was formed there and what effects it had for good or for bad. And talk about that, if everybody's good with that. So, okay. Chapter 5's sole subject was what was happening in England. And there, the author's main point to me seems to be a refutation of white nationalism, picturing England back in those days as an island of white people who, once they get Christianized, are, the ideal of that they're trying to get back to. And the authors strongly point out that England at this point was multicultural, multiracial, multi-everything, and open to ideas and people from all over, at least the Mediterranean world. He's talking about this Bishop Theodore of Canterbury, who starts out in, I think it's at Edessa, which is in what today is eastern Turkey, and I think he migrates at some point to Constantinople, and then I'm not sure if he made it to Africa or if it was his buddy that he ends up with in England who was from North Africa. But he's been all over, and all over not just geographically, but I mean he's studied with the Byzantine Church, and he brings some of those influences into England, as in his mid-50s. He's brought sent to England by the Pope.
Long life.
And sets up a pretty decent school there in Canterbury that becomes famous. Does that morph into Oxford or something at some point?
I'm not sure about that, but I do know that Canterbury is the home of the Church of England. And I've often wondered why Canterbury, and now I know.
Yeah, because that's where the Pope, he sent it over, and then the local king said, had this place in Canterbury.
And maybe the answer to why Canterbury is also, the authors point out, England's a real checkerboard of both Christian and non-Christian power centers.
Yeah.
After the Romans pull out in the 400s, it's all local chiefdoms and kings and queens who are running these power centers. And Canterbury, I think, was being in the southern and southeastern portion of England, is probably where the Roman influence lasted longest, maybe. And so that's where he went. So kind of interesting, at least from the standpoint of refuting white nationalism. Theodore was certainly no example of white nationalism. Let's see. And then we've got the monk, Bede. As I recall from college English lit, it was the Venerable Bede.
Yeah, we read him in a medieval history class. I don't remember anything.
well.
But you remember his name.
Yes, and we read Beowulf and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was thrilled to see Beowulf show up. Like, oh, boy. now-
Yeah.
Well, that's the
Yeah.
author's conceit, really. Beowulf was written around 1000 or something like that. But its subject matter
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
Denmark in the 600s, which is our era here. But yeah, they're just setting that up as an example of strong women really being at the core of what's being told. But it needs to sit out there in the boonies, somewhere in northern England. And he himself speaks 5 or 6 languages. So he's obviously open to other cultures, other peoples. And he's quite influential. And then there's this other monk. I'm going to stumble on his name. Do you remember?
Guthlac?
Yeah,
One is
Guthlac.
yeah, but he's also up north. And he studies under an abbess, a woman, and he's also very influential. And then the final subject of the authors is this wonderful monument, this cross, Rockwell Cross, that I fished up a picture of. The authors just describe it in detail in a couple of pages, but it helps to look at the picture of what they're talking about. And what they're talking about is how the church at this point was hanging on to Rome and traditional Christian thought, but they're also mixing it in with the local culture and building on that. So 2 faces of this cross have Latin inscriptions on them, you can see them, and 2 of them have kind of just vegetable designs or something on, and have inscriptions in the local language. So they're reaching out to all sorts of different communities, both the classic Christian ones and the local, maybe even non-Christian ones, with building this cross. So it's still there, I guess. I saw some other pictures of it as it sits
I'm
today.
gonna have to go check it out.
Yeah,
I think they said it had moved inside. Yeah, they moved it into a small chapel.
right. So, I don't know. To me, the author's thoughts are valid here, and it just shows the church still continuing to carry on the Christian traditions, but also blending in with the local communities, which is probably a good idea, I would think.
This theme of adaptability, we've seen from almost day one of Christianity, the ability for Christianity to adapt to the times, to the culture, to the peoples that they were now interacting with. So, what your sense of how Christianity looks in what we call England now, in terms of its adaptability? What things strike you as particularly?
Well, they now have the Archbishop of Canterbury is a woman.
The first one.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Very recently.
So,
yeah, that's right.
I did
But
notice, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just kind of noticing on this cross, Mary Magdalene washes the master's feet. And I feel like, from what my limited knowledge of the Bible, like the big event is Jesus washing his disciples' feet, not Mary washing his feet.
well, but, no, it's a big story.
No,
Right,
Yeah.
well, but I think it's interesting they're highlighting her washing his feet when the really big story is Jesus washing his
Yeah.
disciples' feet. So,
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's what the south face about it, on the
Yeah.
top half, is that?
yeah, it's on the top half.
Yeah,
It's on the
yeah,
top.
yeah.
So it's a subtle visual, like subtle cue of like, women's subservience. So I think it's interesting they highlighted that versus the other, which is the one that I've heard about. So, and it's like a huge turning on the face, right? So
Right.
kind of the point.
It also occurred to me to at least ask, I mean, this is talking about a couple of powerful women in charge of abbeys. Bertha, I think, was one. Somebody else. But as far as I could tell anyway, even though they have their own abbeys, they're still under control of the local king of Northumbria or whatever. They're not operating independently.
I like these authors' one-liners, which I think they do a good job of kind of summarizing, and so I write them down. The role of women in this case, the skeleton giving this society its shape.
Yeah.
That was really nice. The skeleton giving this society its shape. Way back then, it's interesting. Even then, the powerful role that women played is really good and effective that these authors are continually bringing that theme out. And I guess the role of women in society, the role of women in Christianity, interesting.
And not only these ones who are designated religious types with their abbeys, but also the Christian women, as we've noticed in previous chapters, marrying non-Christian kings and not converting the king himself, at least their children.
Their children,
or their children's children. And just kind of insinuating Christianity into the family. So.
I was also intrigued by, as Finley was saying, how England was not some homogeneous, monolithic bunch of white folks. They described a place of amalgamation, interesting. But what was that amalgamation? Immigration, interesting word, immigration, collaboration, and war. It wasn't some little peaceful, we all get along society, even though there was a lot of integration and collaboration, there's also a lot of war. And so we can't lose sight of that. A pretty dynamic place.
I did like how, I guess it goes along with the skeleton part, but they did bring out kind of the role of women more than I thought that we saw in the first 1,000 years. Again, the men were still the head honchos, but often it was the women behind them or unquote under them that kept the structure, kept the skeleton, and kept things together.
Right.
The women have always played an important role. We don't always get credit for that.
Right.
But it is something that
And
I think
we'll be seeing, I'm sorry to give you a preview, but I mean, in future years of Christianity, the women who try to go on their own don't just get not noticed, they get persecuted, really destroyed. So, I don't know, it's the old boy network, as it first formed up in the first couple of 100 years of Christianity, still going strong, and he's
Still going strong.
Still
going
strong,
I think of my wife's grandfather, who was an Episcopal priest, minister, whatever, in Ann Arbor, and he was a nice guy and everything, but to him, the idea of having women in the clergy was a non-starter, right? Yeah, definitely a member of the old boy network.
and that followed not just in Christianity and Judaism, is very much, even though you could say being Jewish follows through the mother, because you always know who the mother is, even though you don't know who the father is. But when it comes to rabbis, even today in the Reform movement, there are women rabbis. But if you're in an Orthodox, there's not. And in fact, there was a saying that I heard it, which I love, you know, the Seder plate that has all the pieces on it for the Seder. And this was from an Orthodox person, says that an orange belongs on a Seder plate as much as a woman belongs on the bima. And so in some Reform Seders, people have put oranges. So it's not just Christianity.
No, it's definitely, for some reason, again, The Chalice and the Blade is a really good book that talks a lot about this history and like why, you know, how women have become subjugated and like examples of like Crete where women were not for a long time and just what that society looked like. And again, just really big implications for now because, you know, Project 2025 really wants to take away our rights. So, yeah. I like your spirit.
Have you resist socks on? No resist socks? Don't you have resist socks?
I do, but I don't have them on right now. And I also have Ruth Bader Ginsburg socks.
Oh, okay.
I love it.
I'm also struck with these guys, I think have a really good sense of humor in the sense of the pulling out kind of quirky bits of history to make a point. And I got a big kick out of this Bible that was so big.
Oh,
That
right.
you had to put it in a cart to move it around. In this monastery somewhere, these folks laboring over these.
It's huge.
How big were these pages? I mean, from.
Yeah.
And then how was it bound together?
Yeah.
And then they picked up and put in a cart. And then how was it read? You know, the people standing.
On the road, right? Yeah. You hold it all across the
I got a kick out of that.
Yeah.
I guess it's still there.
Is it?
I got this, I don't know. You can't look it up, can you? What was the name of the thing? I can't remember, never mind. But,
Yeah, Google it, I'm sure there's some.
yeah. So anyway, that's the end of chapter 5. The last couple of pages point out how after getting Christianized as far as it was anyway, then Britain started exporting missionaries back across the channel the other way, including this guy Alcuin. I don't know how to pronounce his name, Alcuin. I don't know, Alcuin, I'll say, who goes to the court of none other than Charlemagne and sets up a school there, but is also influential in the court, I think. Helping Charlemagne become a Christian leader, such as he was. So that brings us to the next chapter, unless there are other thoughts about chapter 5. So, okay. Well, chapter 6 begins with describing an elephant.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's the elephant.
yeah. I know.
Apparently, Charlemagne asks for an elephant to be sent to him, to somebody, an African elephant, I think, a huge beast. And it's all part, you can see, of his effort to set himself up as a Christian leader. He brings in all sorts of elements from, he's in touch with the bishop of Jerusalem, the patriarch of Jerusalem, who sends him some genuine relics of the cross and other things that he can keep in his showroom. And he has a throne there in Aachen that is built out of stone, and the stone came from the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. So he's the real McCoy as far as Christian leader
And it
goes.
appeared to be sincere.
Oh,
Yes, yeah, we
not
talked
cyn-
about
not
the
cynical at all.
merging of politics and religion, but here was somebody that actually was a believer.
Not cynical at all, yeah. But boy, it sure works for him. I mean, this combination of power from religion and the state is really something, because he just whomps on every culture around him. The Franks originally started out, I guess we don't have a map, up in the area of the Netherlands and Belgium, and not all that big a territory, but they just start killing off all of the cultures around them, and I mean killing off. I don't know how many people Charlemagne killed, but it was a lot.
Yeah.
All of it, but go ahead.
It also is, I think, the beginning of Rome and the Catholic Church as empire.
Yeah.
For sure, yeah.
Which lasted up until, the 18th century, when the church still owned a lot of land in Italy.
Right,
And it wasn't until Italy became a country that they gave them this little, 6 square mile piece and said, you can have that.
yeah. It wasn't formalized into the Holy Roman Empire until several hundred years after Charlemagne,
Yeah,
but
but
it was already functioning.
Yeah, I mean, he's the one who went down, and when they kicked out the Pope, went down and said, no, this Pope's coming back,
Right,
because I said so.
yeah. And he does it by killing off all the Lombards.
Yeah.
He was not a peaceful man.
I had a light bulb moment reading this chapter. Judy, you mentioning how much property the church owns. And we've heard before about people donating land to the church. They want to do good things or get on the right side. However, what became clear for me here is, boil it down, the role of wars and plunder. Wars and plunder. I had not appreciated how much the king, in this case Charlemagne, the emperor, depended on the aristocracy and the church to support him. And so how do you maintain that support? It's through plunder. Is that you go off in a war and you capture a bunch of land, and then what do? You give it to the aristocracy and the church. I hadn't fully appreciated. I knew about the aristocracy, but I didn't know that the church was also getting this plunder. And Judy just pointed out that I think they still have it to this day, based on the wars and the skillful, maintaining of support by giving away plunder.
A spoils pipeline to all the right places to build the
Hey,
power base.
well.
Yeah.
We're doing it today. Give
You-
those oil
You're not talking about
companies oil.
Venezuelan oil, are you?
Big rig just fell over up in Alaska
Yeah, where
somewhere.
my kids are at.
Oh, really?
Not in that village, but on the North Slope.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah,
Yikes. Yeah.
but,
What I felt sorry for was the elephant.
Yes.
yeah, he didn't do that well, did he?
No, he died shortly after he got there.
They're not supposed to be living. They're supposed to be in Africa, not
Yes.
on the north side of the Alps.
And they don't
very
do well
social.
alone.
And they're so, yeah.
They're very social.
And
If it was a female elephant especially,
Yeah.
they live in they're very close-knit female groups. So, yeah.
I wasn't sure, after the living elephant died, did they set up its tusk as a monument or something, as a reminder?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was a male elephant.
Yeah, with the big
What's that?
tusks, it was probably a male.
But this chapel in Aachen, that was Charlemagne's place where he had his throne, crown and everything, is still there. And the authors point out what I didn't see on Wikipedia, but that was all set up with a bunch of religious imagery also. The measurements around the chapel were the same as the measurements described in the book of Revelation.
Yeah, I looked up that chapter in Revelations. That was interesting.
Yeah, they're still wrangling, as I take it off Wikipedia, what the unit of measurement was.
Yeah.
The authors seem to have figured it out.
Or maybe
Yeah.
So, so finally, this must be the culmination of the combination of church and state. I mean, he basically rules all of Europe by the time he's done, except for England, I guess, and even then he had a relationship with them that he was probably in charge of. And it doesn't last.
No, once he's gone,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like,
It was a cult of personality, I guess. And his three sons, maybe they couldn't agree among themselves which of the three should be the designated agent of God or something. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
it kind of reminds me, back to the other book, but of Constantine. Once he died and his three sons, it was the same kind of thing.
You're right.
They divided things up, and it reminded me when I read about Charlemagne and how, yeah, this kind of sounds familiar.
Right.
Of how it,
Yeah. And once again, the whole disaster being chronicled by a woman here to do that.
Yeah.
yeah,
Writes it all down. That is before she herself dies and her family all get killed off by the French.
yeah.
One incident that I recall, I don't think they hit it in this thing, but in this chapter, but Charlemagne at one point in his long struggle with the Saxons got really ticked off when the Saxons caught one of his armies and beat them in a battle, and Charlemagne goes himself then and beats the Saxons in a battle and takes all the prisoners, 4,500 of them, the records say, and has them beheaded all in one day.
Oh, man.
If you can imagine that.
That's terrible.
And I read that the Nazis in World War II at first didn't like this, that this had been done to the Saxons, because they kind of identified with the Saxons initially. But then they saw that Charlemagne actually being ruler of all of Europe as they themselves wanted to be, and they switched their ideas and put up a monument in the place where all the Saxons had been killed. It's all usable in the quest for power, I guess you can say.
A lot of what you're talking about, it reminds me of, this is a little bit further in history, it's November 13th, 1002, St. Brice's Day Massacre, and it's where the English king at the time ordered all the Danes massacred, all the Danish settlers, and like burned in a church, and all these things. And fun little fact, if you guys ever get your genetics done, apparently a bunch of bodies from that massacre I'm related to. So, yeah, I was like, ugh.
They must have had children before they were massacred.
Or they're just like, side
Yeah.
relative.
Right.
But yeah, I didn't know about that before, so turns out I'm 10% Danish, so.
Body genetics are doing quite a bit to make connections like that. My wife has type B blood.
Yeah.
I've read is a definite marker for all those descended from Genghis Khan. And this makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, anybody with blue eyes is related to, can be traced to one individual near the Black Sea.
Really?
10,000 years ago. So before 10,000 BC, no blue eyes. It's a fairly recent mutation.
Yeah, I was gonna
So,
say, it's
yeah.
going when it comes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Clan of the Cave Bear is not accurate.
One of my favorite lines from the Bible, and see it playing out here is that you reap what you sow, and as we talked about Charlemagne, so much relied on violence, in addition to all of his developing of alliances, but the very violent culture that he benefited from and created, when his sons came along, they too were part of that violent culture, and guess what? They proceeded to violence against each other. And I think in Constantine's time that they had separate,
They actually had some more separate.
they kind of did a
areas.
deal somewhere.
Yeah.
But here that these guys were immediately upon each other, feuding, and the empire itself imploded because of it. But there's the whole notion of sustainability not present in these violent empires that were based on brute power as well as strategic alliances. And it's like you reap what you sow. And I see it playing out around the world today.
Yeah,
I think particularly in Palestine, all the terrible tragedy and violence going on there, it just has been sown for so many years that we continue to reap the violence today.
Yeah, the formula still goes on. I read recently that in the Revolutionary War times, George Washington had a friend who was a pastor of a church and knew that the guy had some military experience, so he asked him if he could form up a regiment to join Washington's army against the British. And the pastor appeared in church on Sunday talking about the book of Ecclesiastes, and he says, in Ecclesiastes it says, there is a time for peace, and there's a time for war. And he whips off his church robes, and he's got his colonel's uniform.
that is dramatic. I love it.
And all the young men of the church immediately stepped up and joined up, volunteered.
I had
Yeah.
sorry. I had an interesting conversation with my brother last week regarding like violence, like and one of the things I've been having a lot of conversations with people lately is that violence is only going to create more violence. Like it's not going to create the world that we want. And right now we have like this really unique opportunity to make a better world. It's not going to be easy, but it's there, the opportunity. And the problem is that we have to embody the world that we want, the kingdom of God in this case, right? Like we have to embody that. And so I've been, I have some friends who are from Iran, and like they have family near Tehran, and all the protests that are happening and how they're just being mowed down. And so it's kind of like, I think sometimes we think nonviolent resistance looks like one thing, which is just like everybody in the streets just moving. And I'm like, it's very context, just based on what I've been reading more recently, but also in the past regarding the teachings of Jesus and all that. I think it's much more context driven, and it doesn't have to look like that, but it has to embody this new world. We can like defend ourselves. Like, I don't think being cannon fodder is helpful either, right? So yeah, I've just been having a lot of different conversations about people like, what does this look like? How do we do this? But we definitely can't use the tools of the old system to create the new system, because we're just going to end up with a Stalin. We're just going to end up with,
Like Dave says, it isn't sustainable.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not easy, but what do we do? What does it look like? How do we create this new world while embodying and having vision pull us rather than pain push us?
Yeah.
So having this conversation yesterday with a group that I'm involved in now. So yeah.
I mean, your Charlotte and your popes and various kings having their armies march into battle for their murderous wars with crosses on their shields.
Yeah.
I mean, they all bought into Jesus' message as being just a replica of the God of the Old Testament who would lead armies to victory or something like that. They were pretty convinced if they went into battle with crosses on the shield, they were going to win. I don't know. I think they just didn't read enough about Jesus' message.
Yes, he certainly didn't go into battle.
Carrying on with that, again, I like some of his lines. Talked about the marrying of religion and violence, the constant theme. And the soldiers to fight and churchmen to pray, God on their side.
Yeah.
And so we see here that how the two were so codependent. And we're going to see even more of that coming with the Crusades and all that kind of stuff. We see that the Pope in Rome was having a lot of trouble with the Lombards, so Charlemagne comes in and takes care of that. Just the marrying of religion and violence.
And it could go either way in this era. I mean, the king could be your religious leader, or your religious leader could be the secular administrator, basically. And even the religious districts were set up to be the same as the state boundaries. It was perfect alliance.
So I guess my question, fast forward to today, have we learned from these times, or are we simply repeating them and using a lot of the same strategies? The marrying of religion and violence with God on our side.
All you had to do was listen to the interview of Huckabee talking about what's going on in Israel. He never once mentioned Gaza or the West Bank. Not once.
Yeah. Very much looking for Armageddon to be.
Yeah, and all the things that happened to Israel and the Israelis never once mentioned what else is going on in that very tiny region.
Yeah.
So I kept waiting for him to say something about the West Bank.
What I found interesting when I was there was that there's this freeway that goes from Jerusalem, from the airport area, and I was in Haifa. And there's one exit and entrance to that part of Israel. One. And it's several miles.
Yeah. They can only have so many
50
checkpoints.
sticks in my head, but I'm not sure if it's right. But yeah, they've been discriminated against.
Yeah.
That was some years ago.
75 years?
Does that massive wall that they built 20 years ago still stand?
It was when I was there about 7-8 years ago, full of graffiti, but it's definitely there, and it's huge. I mean,
But
it's very tall.
the authors of our book would object that it's very medieval looking.
Yeah, no, it's very much there.
I was reminded of our earlier class when we had the music of Bob Dylan. Remember?
Yeah, yes.
And that song with God, the refrain at the end of every with God on our side.
Yes.
And he was talking more about the Vietnam War and stuff like that. But just hear that theme repeated in our lifetime.
Right. And then we had our Crusaders hymn, Onward Christian Soldiers.
Yeah.
Man, we used to sing that a lot when I was little.
Yeah, I had no idea what it was referring to. Yeah. In fact, when we had funerals for our cats, my sisters and I, that was the only hymn we really knew. So we sang Is that a comfort? I said said, was that a comfort?
Well, we paraded around the yard singing Onward Christian Soldiers and went back to the grave site in the backyard. I guess it was a comfort. I guess we knew, we thought,
Yeah.
we just assumed that cats are Christian. Or pets are Christian. We put crosses, yeah, we put crosses on the grave.
What would you do with your little Foley's cats?
My parents let them go outside and they got run over.
All my cats are outside cats, except.
And we see Islam very much tied in with violence.
Oh,
Yeah.
And it's kind of a,
And again, I don't understand.
now, I don't know, anyway, nothing about Buddhism or Confucius or do they?
There's our
are
Buddhist
those
expert over here.
interrelated with war and violence, or are they? I sense they're much more of a peace thing, but have governments used that religion?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, so a long time ago, I told this other woman, oh, I'm Buddhist. And she's like, oh, I have no problem with Buddhists. And I'm like, you should. I mean, again, Buddhism is just as complex as Christianity. There's all different kinds. And there's a difference between laity and like the ordained. There's a difference between like who's in charge politically versus, I think the only sect of Buddhism where it's the same is Tibet with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, where he's both the political and spiritual leader. So, but no, ideally it's about nonviolent resistance. It's, there's a lot of the teachings are the same. I was just talking with my other parents, the Southern Baptist missionaries that I met, and she was like, yeah, we talked a lot, you and I, between, about Buddhism and Christianity. She's like, there is really not that much difference, honestly. And as far as like the actual on the ground teachings and like practices and how we would appear in the world, what would Jesus do? What would Buddha do? Pretty much same. And so, yeah, there's definitely people that, don't get the message. And currently right now in the southeastern United States, there are a bunch of monks that are walking for peace.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah. So, yeah. So I think it's, across the human condition, there is the battle between, good and evil, or like light and darkness, however you want to frame it. So we have choices, we have agency. So what choices are we going to make? What's easier, to lash out or to like not and take a moment and be like, wait, what do I do? Jesus teaches that, Buddha teaches that. So, and I actually just came across a book called Liturgies for Resisting Empire. Apparently it was published last year, but it's seeking community, belonging, and peace in a dehumanizing world. So I'm kind of see about like finding that and buying it and telling you guys what I think, but it might be kind of nice to have. So
The Buddhists in India don't have much hesitation to use violence against Muslims, and of course it's reciprocated.
right, and again, that's the laity. So yeah, like there's just everyday people, and then you have your ordained. And then, so it's yeah.
Right.
I mean.
And who are those refugee people in Myanmar?
Burma?
They're Muslim, right? And
Rohingya, yeah.
Yeah.
They're Muslim.
they get violently persecuted, I think, also by Buddhists. I suppose.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the Buddhists in Myanmar can be very violent.
Yeah, they're Theravada. I have thoughts. And I don't speak, again, I'm speaking for myself and just based on, but I once picked up a Theravadan Buddhist book where it was saying that being born a conjoined twin was a punishment for being homosexual in a past life. And I just started looking at it like, walking away. So yeah, and also the idea that sure, a woman can be a Buddha if she is born as a man in the next life. So yeah, so but that does not necessarily mean all Theravadins and like everybody from that. Like it's more regional based, not necessarily, but there are some ideas, and it doesn't make other vehicles. That's what they call the different branches perfect either, so, yeah. And, one can also ask, like, the Chinese occupation of Tibet, the takeover, the not resisting and whatnot, is that really a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Like what, again, it's like being cannon fodder. Is that really helpful? So yeah, all these questions, all these things that we can discuss because it's very relevant. So.
What occurred to me, by the way, this just coming back into my old brain, but these authors, and I think the first 1,000 years, both of them, to a large extent, ignored a scientific factor in what's going on here, and that was the plague that came into all these areas that we're talking about periodically, wiping out just huge segments of the population with all sorts of effects on the church. And
Was the plague going on during this period or?
Oh, yeah.
They did mention
Or both?
one plague.
Yes.
Yeah.
Multiple plagues?
Oh, multiple, yeah, there was one really huge one
So we think it was a
that
black
started in Asia and just
swift
Right,
across.
one
and it was
came
the
from
first
Crimea.
really big one. And it just,
And when approximately was that?
I'm trying to remember, but it was before 1,000. I
In
can
the
find out.
500s, I think.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's what I think.
There was one plague that was called Justinian plague. I mean,
Yeah,
well, 300s or something like that. But another one in the 500s.
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of it, but it was the Black Plague, and it was spread by rats that came on these same ships that were bringing goods and ideas and all that from other areas, what they were also carrying the plague.
yeah.
And eventually, I mean, we still haven't gotten to this era yet, but the plague in the 1500s or something, I mean, took half the population of Europe.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's the one I was thinking of.
Yeah.
but this one also in the 500s took quite a few people. Anyway.
We still have it now, I looked it up.
Oh, yeah, it's endemic to the US and the Southwest.
Yeah, right.
There's a book about when the plague came to San Francisco. And they just didn't treat it properly, and it became endemic in wild rats and other rodents.
Yeah, there are different forms of plague. One is spread by pneumonic plague, but that doesn't spread very rapidly, apparently. It's the stuff from rats and tick bites that really spread it rapidly. But all this had an effect on both government and the church.
Yeah, and it was not addressed here, was it?
Right. Yeah.
Maybe it's
Yeah, we might get into it later, but yeah.
So it said there are three major plagues: the Justinian in 541, the Black Plague in 1347, and the third one starting in 1855. Yeah,
1855?
and I think that's when the plague came to San Francisco.
That would make sense.
we did in the 1300s.
It was also a huge, around at the end of World War I.
That was.
Oh, that was the flu.
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 That was the flu.
But not.
My mother talked about the flu in she was born in 1910, so.
Yeah, that took a lot of people.
Well, and a really good thing to keep in mind is, what's really important is the stories we tell ourselves and the ideas that we have. So like what